Catholics in the Brooklyn Diocese are being scammed, receiving text messages claiming their parish priests need money for charity. I'm Tim Harfman, and that story is coming up.
We're trying to get a suspect info. We do have one person.
Tragedy in Colorado, another school shooting unnerves the country as shots ring out just miles from Columbine High School. Then the Brooklyn Diocese is celebrating World Communications Day, the annual celebration of faith-based media. We'll have a special report on how the Catholic Church is working to bring good news to the faithful. Plus, Pope Francis reflects on his trip to the Balkans, dedicating his weekly general audience to the impact of his visit to Bulgaria and North Macedonia. The news starts right now. Good evening, I'm Emily Druby. Liz Faublas is off. Scammers posing as local priests are targeting parishioners in the Brooklyn Diocese for their hard-earned money, and now the NYPD is involved. Currents News' Tim Harfman reports on how some Catholics are being tricked into giving money to these con artists and what you can do to prevent yourself from becoming their next victim.
He texted me.
Just when you think you're getting a text message from your parish priest, it could be from an imposter. It's a scam targeting Catholics in the Brooklyn Diocese. At least one person is responsible, but there could be others. Annette Clark, a parishioner at St. Rose of Lima Church in Rockaway, thought she was receiving a text from her pastor, Father James Caroli.
It says, "Hi, Annette. I need you to do me a favor," which is not unusual.
That's because Annette's an active member of the parish, where she's a catechist and makes rosaries. What was unusual for her, the phone number with a 929 area code.
That was from a number that she did not recognize, but it had my name on it, asking for gift cards for cancer patients.
The text asked Annette to buy $300 worth of gift cards, scratch the barcodes on the back, and send a photo of the PIN numbers. She was on her way to purchase them, but arriving at her local Rite Aid store, she says something clicked.
I found something strange, and I'm looking. I said, why is Father responding as Father James A. Caroli? He would never send me a text like that.
The scammer kept texting Annette. She stopped responding and reported it to the NYPD. There's an ongoing investigation. Annette was lucky, but other Catholics can't say the same. Besides St. Rose of Lima, parishioners at least 5 other churches have been targeted. They are St. Helen in Howard Beach, Incarnation Church in Queens Village, Our Lady of Perpetual Help in South Ozone Park, St. Clair in Rosedale, and St. Fortunata in East New York. John Heyer is the director of the annual Catholic Appeal, a campaign conducted in every parish of Brooklyn and Queens.
We don't send out texts and ask you then to donate things like gift cards.
John says it is possible for Catholics to receive a text message when they sign up for an annual Catholic Appeal notification.
And then you would receive in response a link to the annual Catholic Appeal donation page where you could give your donation, which is completely secure.
The hope that the phony pastor or pastors don't claim any more victims.
You pray for that person, but you also have that hope that that person recognizes that what they've done is something that's wrong and that they convert themselves into a better way of life.
Diocesan officials believe the scammer gets the phone numbers from weekly church bulletins, so parishes are being warned not to publish personal cell phone numbers in their bulletins or post them on their websites or social media. Emily?
So Tim, what happened to targeted parishioners at other churches?
Well, unfortunately, some of them fell for the scam. Pastors I spoke with say at one church, a woman sent $850. Meanwhile, at another, 3 different parishioners wired $700 each. This is a story we're going to continue to follow, Emily.
Tim, thank you so much. President Trump is using the power of the presidency to assert executive privilege over all materials subpoenaed by Congress, including the full unredacted Mueller report. The Department of Justice informing the House Judiciary Committee of the decision just before today's hearing. Democrats are demanding the full report along with all supporting evidence gathered. Attorney General William Barr, who wrote a letter to the president urging him to invoke privilege over the report, is claiming House Democrats' effort to gain access to the unredacted version are illegal. The committee has voted to hold Barr in contempt for refusing to release the materials. Karen Kafa has the details from Washington.
House Democrats and Republicans in another clash over the Mueller report. We have a constitutional responsibility to serve as a check and balance on an out-of-control executive branch. The Attorney General is totally out of control.
This subpoena puts the Attorney General in legal catch-22. To comply with the subpoena, he must break the law.
The House Judiciary Committee voting along party lines to recommend Attorney General William Barr be held in contempt of Congress for refusal to comply with the panel's subpoena for the unredacted version of the report and underlying evidence.
This is information we are legally entitled to receive, and we are constitutionally obligated to review.
Just before the committee convened, the Justice Department said President Trump had asserted executive privilege over the materials. The White House said the Attorney General has already released everything he could.
The Attorney General is protecting information, grand jury information, confidential information that he cannot release.
The committee vote against Barr comes as the Trump administration denies multiple oversight requests by Hill Democrats, ranging from the president's tax returns to witness testimony from former and current White House officials. The committee's recommendation now goes to the full Democratic-controlled House. The next stop would be the courts. In Washington, Karen Kafa, Currents News.
A federal appeals court has ruled that the Trump administration can continue to send asylum seekers back to Mexico while their request for asylum in the United States is being reviewed. The ruling is a victory for the administration, whose immigration policies have faced constant legal challenges in the past. The appeals court is allowing the policy to continue only on a temporary basis while it reviews other issues related to immigration. The Mexican Bishops' Conference is speaking out on the crisis at the border, saying the immense number of migrants has exceeded the assistance of the church and actions of the government. At the door to the southern border, there are thousands of our brother persons who have gone days without eating and sleeping in the streets. An important international Catholic event being celebrated across the world. It's World Communications Day. Since the Second Vatican Council in the 60s, the Universal Church annually honors spreading the good news along the internet superhighway. Communicating the message of Christ's word is especially important and was highlighted today at an event held in the Brooklyn Diocese. A celebration of the media and the Catholic faith.
We commit ourselves to use all the media at our disposal to spread the message of love that this world craves.
The annual World Communications Day event held in Brooklyn. The theme, The Power of the Story, Growing the Catholic Church Through the Good News. A message which Brooklyn's Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio says is more important now than ever.
If we don't tell our story and the good stories, you're only going to hear bad stories, because that's the way the news is. They only want to have the exceptional things.
The Director of Communications for the Diocese of Brooklyn, Adriana Rodriguez, adding, while it might be a turbulent time for the church, there's a lot of really beautiful things happening across the boroughs that deserve to be highlighted.
Lately in the news, all we hear is bad news when it involves the Catholic Church. And we're trying to grow the good news. We know that in the pews, there are stories of people working hard. There are stories of people who are being helped by our church.
World Communications Day event attendees participated in a panel presentation with directors from DeSales Media Group on exactly how to spread the good news.
The success stories are endless, and the love of humankind knows no boundaries.
Learning what makes a good story, and as Vito Formica, the Executive Director of News Content and Development for DeSales Media Group, explains the importance.
Today's message is really about storytelling, the power of the story, how parishes, pastors, anyone within the church can use the power of storytelling to evangelize. And it's really not done enough.
The Vicar for Communications in the Diocese of Brooklyn, Monsignor Kieran Harrington, explains in present times, an important part of that storytelling is social media.
How is it that we can take the gospel that Jesus has spoken and make it alive for us today? How can we see that that word is not a word spoken simply 2,000 years ago, but is alive for the people in Brooklyn and Queens right now in 2019?
Keynote speaker Monsignor Sean Ogle says using new media is essential to spreading the faith.
For any minister of the gospel, you have to use every possible means of reaching people, whatever the media is, traditional, new, old, digital, knocking on doors, whatever. All of those things have to be done.
He's managed to successfully integrate a digital presence into the daily lives of his parishioners at Our Lady of Mount Carmel Church in Astoria, using social media, YouTube, smart TVs, and the web to help spread the goodness and the vitality of his parish. For his success, he received the St. Francis de Sales Distinguished Communicator Award presented by Bishop Nicholas DiMarzio. A successful event working to make the ties between faith and the media even stronger. Last year's winner of the St. Francis de Sales Distinguished Communicator Award was Ed Wilkinson, the editor emeritus of the Brooklyn Diocese tablet newspaper. After abruptly canceling his trip to Germany, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo was in London today, meeting with the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, and Britain's Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt for a roundtable on religious freedom and Christian persecution. Pompeo also made a surprise visit to Iraq, where he laid out his security concerns amid rising tensions with Iran. This as Iran is reducing its commitments to the 2015 nuclear deal. President Hassan Rouhani made the announcement yesterday, exactly 1 year after the U.S. left the treaty. He says other countries have 60 days to choose between following President Trump or engaging in oil trade with Iran in violation of the sanctions imposed by the United States. But Mike Pompeo says the U.S. will just wait and see.
They've made a number of statements about actions they threatened to do in order to get the world to jump. We'll see what they actually do. The United States will wait to observe that.
The United States imposes sanctions on all nations who import Iranian oil. This week, the White House also deployed a carrier strike group to the Middle East as a means of defense for troops on the ground. There's a lot more news headed your way. Another school shooting leaves the country reeling, this time in Colorado. One student is dead and 2 suspects are in custody. Pope Francis is reflecting on his trip to the Balkans, why he says it's important for Catholics to be tender and charitable. And shocking images from Texas, severe flooding there is causing sinkholes, even forcing schools to close.
We have a shooter in room 107.
Another school shooting has devastated a community, this time in suburban Denver. Gunfire echoing through the hallways of yet another Colorado school on Tuesday, killing Kendrick Ray Castillo, a high school senior just days away from graduation. 8 others were also injured. Authorities say 2 students are now in custody, 18-year-old Devin Erickson and a juvenile female who has not been identified. The 2 suspects, who were also students at the school, allegedly opened fire on 2 classrooms before being apprehended. Camilla Burnell reports on the victim, who is being hailed a hero.
And the next thing I know, he's pulling out a gun.
In the midst of unspeakable tragedy, as gunfire shattered the serenity of a Colorado classroom, a moment of heroism.
As soon as he said, "Don't you move," Kendrick lunged, giving all of us enough time to hide under our desks, and the shooter ended up shooting Kendrick.
18-year-old Kendrick Castillo sacrificed his life to save his classmates.
I know that because of what he did, others are alive, and I thank God for that. I love him, and he's a hero. He always will be. But there's another part of you that wishes he would have just turned and ran.
If it had not been for him, I wouldn't have my baby today.
Other students followed Castillo's lead and were able to subdue the shooter.
They risked their own lives so that we could all have our own.
As students held one gunman, investigators say another shooter opened fire on a different classroom. Police say each shooter had a handgun. In total, they shot 9 people.
And if you had suggested to anyone behind me or in this room that within 20 years and 20 miles we would have dealt with Columbine, Aurora Theater, Arapahoe High School, the shooting of Zach Parrish and 4 other deputies, we'd have thought you mad. And yet here we are again.
In Highlands Ranch, Colorado, I'm Camila Burnell.
The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops responding to the tragedy in Colorado, saying this shooting reminds us yet again that something is fundamentally broken in our society when places of learning can become scenes of violence and disregard for human life. Action is needed to attempt to reduce the frequency of these heinous acts. According to the Washington Post, 237 school shootings have happened since Columbine in 1999. Just this past April 30th, a gunman opened fire at UNC Charlotte, killing 2 students and injuring multiple. Some of the deadliest so far have been the shooting at Virginia Tech. Only 8 years later, 32 people were killed. Half a decade later, in 2012, a shooter entered Sandy Hook Elementary School and carried out the second deadliest shooting. 26 children and school administrators dead. Only a year ago, the Ash Wednesday massacre at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School left 17 students and teachers gunned down in cold blood. UNC Charlotte will be increasing security at their commencement ceremonies this weekend. The university made the announcement Wednesday, more than a week after the shooting on campus. Administrators say they have noted some of the students have needed counseling in the wake of the killings.
Issues, with sleeping, focus, as some students moved into finals or had final projects, how they were going to manage getting their work done with the emotional impact of this incident.
Nearly 5,000 graduates are expected to receive degrees on Friday and Saturday. The university says everyone will be required to pass through metal detectors to enter where the ceremonies are taking place. Pope Francis is back in Rome after his trip to the Balkans, and the Holy Father is reflecting on the importance of his journey and the spiritual presence of St. Mother Teresa of Calcutta while in her home country of Macedonia. Sean Richardson has that report.
As is usual every time he returns from an apostolic journey, Pope Francis dedicated his general audience to remembering his visit to Bulgaria and North Macedonia.
Anche oggi c'è bisogno di evangelizzatori appassionati e creativi, perché il Vangelo raggiunga quanti ancora non lo conoscono e possa irrigare di nuovo le terre dove le antiche radici cristiane si sono inaridite.
In North Macedonia, one of the special moments for the Pope was his visit to Skopje. There he was impressed by the tenderness of the missionaries of charity to the most needy.
Ma lo fanno con tenerezza. Tante volte noi cristiani perdiamo questa dimensione della tenerezza. Queste suore sono dolci nella tenerezza e fanno la carità, ma la carità sì, come è, senza travestirla. Invece quando si fa la carità senza tenerezza, senza amore, è come se all'opera di carità noi le buttiamo un bicchiere di aceto.
Pope Francis also noted how North Macedonia has received hundreds of refugees from the Middle East. Before concluding his general audience, the Pope dedicated a few words in memory of John Vanier, who recently died. Vanier founded the L'Arche Communities, which is present in more than 30 countries. They take care of people with disabilities.
In Rome, Sean Richardson, Currents News.
Asia Bibi, the Pakistani Christian woman who was freed from death row, is finally in Canada tonight. The 54-year-old mother of 5 has been facing death threats since her 2010 conviction for blasphemy against Islam was overturned by Pakistan's Supreme Court last year. Tonight, she is safe and back with her children. Advanced alcohol-related liver disease is on the rise in the U.S. That's according to a study in the Journal of the American Medical Association. Experts looked at over 34,000 people and found the prevalence of alcoholic fatty liver disease with at least stage 2 fibrosis increased from 0.6% in 2001 to 1.5% in 2016. Alcoholic liver disease is a leading cause of death in the U.S., with nearly 250,000 deaths attributed to the disease. In other health news, a warning about drinking water in the U.S. Northeastern University researchers say water sources servicing as many as 19 million people in 43 states were found to have unsafe PFA levels. PFAs are man-made chemicals linked to birth defects, infertility, and cancer. The researchers say the government PFA safety threshold of 70 parts per trillion is far too high. Dramatic images now from parts of Texas where 9 inches of rain fell on Tuesday, causing sinkholes to appear in the streets and forcing some schools to close down while children remained inside. Flooding is still a major concern for residents and first responders as another round of storms is expected tonight. Omar Jimenez has the latest.
Bracing for round 2.
From Texas to Illinois, violent thunderstorms are expected to ramp up for a second day in towns already hit with heavy rain and severe flooding, stranding hundreds of people.
I actually myself pulled probably 3 or 4 out of the water with my truck.
In the Houston area alone, the fire department received 250 calls for high water rescues. Local officials are asking people to stay alert and evacuate before it gets too dangerous.
If you know that you normally get water in this area, it'd be good to do it before it becomes too late.
The rising waters leaving hundreds of homes underwater and stranding animals. Students at one Texas school were stranded overnight because of the heavy rain and flooding. In Cleveland, Texas, the massive downpour damaged main roadways, keeping buses and parents off the roads, and forced Southside Elementary to keep students inside.
It started getting higher and higher outside, and they started locking us in.
Got down the road, and the water was so high, I turned around, and then I realized him calling me that I had no choice.
In Sugar Land, Texas, I'm Omar Jimenez.
Still to come on Currents News, a living memorial opens in Manhattan. A new exhibit gives an inside look at the atrocities in Auschwitz on the anniversary of a very significant date in history. Plus, one college graduate is saying it's never too late, why it took him over 70 years to get his college degree. And the tablet has a brand new page called Our Diocesan Family, where you can share your pictures of recent baptisms, Holy Communions, confirmations, marriage, all of the joyous sacraments. For more details and to submit your photos, go to thetablet.org/Our Diocesan Family. Your picture may be published in an upcoming issue of the newspaper. We'll be right back.
When I arrived to Auschwitz and I marched with the fives, and on one side I saw people, women that didn't look normal, with a blanket.
Ray Keener talking about her experience at the infamous Auschwitz concentration camp when she was only 11 years old. Mrs. Keener survived the atrocities of Auschwitz. Today marks the day that she and her fellow prisoners had prayed for, Victory in Europe, or VE Day, when Germany formally surrendered to the Allies and World War II was over. In honor of this momentous occasion, the Museum of Jewish Heritage in Battery Park is opening to the public a new exhibit that explores the horrors of Auschwitz. The living memorial offers a glimpse into what daily life was like at the notorious concentration camp. The exhibit will run until January of next year. A teen in China is being hailed a hero after saving 14 people from a burning building. Residents were trapped inside an apartment building in Fushan City when a 19-year-old crane operator working on a nearby construction site jumped into action. Lan Junzi drove his crane to the scene and hoisted a basket to the 3rd floor. Hours later, he was able to save over a dozen residents. One man is finally getting his college degree after over 70 years. 90-year-old Bob Dwyer got his bachelor's degree from Northeastern Illinois University on Monday. Dwyer started his college career in the 1940s, but because of a full-time job and raising 9 kids, he was forced to drop out. Despite his doubts on going back to school, he now hopes his walk across the stage sends a message.
And then I said, well, what else do I have to do? It's never going to be too late, and I think the reward is worth it.
Bob got his bachelor's degree in interdisciplinary studies and is now in the history books as Northeastern Illinois University's oldest graduate. Congratulations to him. That is Currents News. I'm Emily Druby. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.